Well, g'day and welcome everyone. It's so good to be together for what is our first Life and Health of the Church. And we'll explain a bit more what the purpose of these are and what we desire to do with these in a minute. But first of all, I got some housekeeping for us. In-house, if you are attending, we just need to make sure we get some details from you. One, for COVID. And also two, for attendance, because this is an official meeting. So we do need to actually get those details so that we can say who came to this meeting. If you're online, you might be wondering, how are you going to get our attendance from there? What we really would love for you to do is, if you can, in the chat, say g'day and then just write your first and last name for us in the chat box. What that will do is be able to give us the details that we need to be able to fill out the attendance and who has actually seen tonight. So that's really important. And we're going to get into the meeting by actually opening in prayer. So I'm going to invite Mr. Eric Evans up and as the Congregational Chairman, and he's going to open prayer for us.
All right, let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for what you've done for us in our lives as individuals and as a church. And we pray that you will continue to do things in our lives, that you will make us aware of how much you have in store for us, and that you want to work through us and with us to reach others around us. In your name, amen.
Thank you, Eric. Well, so as I was saying, this is the first of the Life and Health of the Church, and we're intending to use these as opportunities to actually, one, communicate what the vision and the ministry and what the church is up to and how things are going, whether ministries are doing well, whether they're not doing well, whether actually there's something that we're looking to change, and so whether there's updates we need to communicate, some things that might actually be coming up. All those sorts of things are part of this. It's also doing part of the requirements of which we need to do. So this is part of that, and we're using this as the congregational meeting so that we can do this. And we are hoping this is going to be a really effective way to actually keep everyone informed, but also allow everyone to have an active say in the direction of the church, because we don't want it to just be an insular group directing. We're actually looking as the whole church to figure out, where are we going as a church? How are we impacting our community? How are we actually looking to live out this life and be something in this? So before we get into the actual, some of the things we'd love to talk about, I just want to start with a devotion, just really quickly, and just center ourselves, because we're a church that actually believes in the word of God in the Bible, and we find that as the value. So we're going to start there. We've started with prayer, and I just want to read out a verse for you from Judges 7. It's Judges 7 verse 2, and it's actually the story of Gideon. Now, if you're familiar with the story of Gideon, what happened up to this point is Gideon has been told he's going to release the people from this slavery, from being overcome by another country, and that what's actually happening is Gideon's going to set them free. And it comes to verse 2 here, and the Lord said to Gideon, "You have too many men, and I cannot deliver Midian into their hands, or Israel would boast against me. My own strength has saved me," is what they'll say. And what we want to make sure, and why I bring this verse into it for the life and the health of the church, is we want to come back to this place where we're actually always saying, this is God that's doing stuff in our community. This is God that's working in our community, in us here, but also in everything that we do as a church. So that's why we are actually doing this, because we also want to come back and center ourselves in what it means to be a church that fully is devoted to become disciples of Jesus. So I just wanted to share that thought. So what we're going to hopefully have tonight is some opportunity where we're inspired, some opportunity where we feel encouraged by what the church is happening with. We might even feel a little bit challenged because of a few things that are actually changing. We're hoping that this will model a way forward for us. and also that we're going to feel enabled to engage with what the church is up to, especially as we start to transition and come out of this time of isolation, this COVID restriction time, and we're looking to reintegrate, and we just all want to take off on that same step. So what we actually wanted to talk about first was we starting with this idea of God-desired outcomes. Now, let me tell you what this phrase means. And some people might have heard actually what this means, but we've been part of this BDC, this movement of BDC, these processes. And it's essentially discipleship training. That's what it is. And so the leading group that's done it, that is myself, Annette, Kerry, Josh, and Simon. We actually have been part of some training by a mega church called Crossway. And what Crossway's done is they actually put, for us as a leading group, together some intensives for us to attend, where they actually give us a bit more of how can you help direct your church. Not just how do we become good disciples ourselves that live out the call of Jesus on our life, but how do we actually step into, as a group, as a church, as a community, some of those steps. And they presented this tool to us called God-Desired Outcomes. And what it pointed out was churches often sit on statistics which actually they really only systemic. If we think about it, how many people in the church, how much tithe is coming in, how many people have come to the cafe is an example for us. They're all good numbers, but they don't really reflect on what it means for us to be living out our mission statement, which is to become fully devoted disciples of Jesus. So what was put to us is actually we need to change our thinking and actually start changing the way in which we count in church. So that is what's called God-desired outcomes. And God-desired outcomes should relate to what actually the church is moving into. So this is things like, and we've established some things, like how many people are reading the Bible with someone for the first time? How many people have entered into baptism? Which there is a baptism on Sunday, which is super exciting, and that's another fantastic thing to celebrate. It's things like also, how many people are stepping into service? Actually taking up the call of servicehood. How many people are replicating what it means to be a disciple? So they're not just being a disciple themselves, but they've taught someone how to be a disciple. And these are the things that we're actually saying, they're the vision measurements, if you would, which actually are what we want to use to push forward, that we want to use to start identifying what actually is valuable for us as a church. Not that people coming in and the number that isn't important. Again, I want to reiterate that. But actually how we move forward. So we're trying to reorientate this culture. So I'm going to invite Simon up, and he's going to talk a bit more into this space of God-desired outcomes.
Well, thank you, Caleb. And it's a privilege to be here and speaking again tonight in this Life and Health meeting. Firstly, when we think about God-desired outcomes, one of the important aspects when we think about them is they are measuring the path of discipleship, the path of making commitments of people in their lives towards becoming a Christian, and then what that actually means in their lives. As a church, we also need to be thinking about, beyond just even those things, about where we're heading in the future. What is our vision? What are we going to be doing? What that actually means for us. So as we are thinking about our godly desired outcomes, we also need to be thinking about where we're wanting to be in 3 to 5 years. I don't want to make the vision any bigger than that. I don't want us to go beyond that. But 3 to 5 years is actually a really important point for our life in the church. And I just want to just pause for a moment because I need to actually state a couple of facts for us as a church. This is my 13th year here at Cronulla New Beginnings Uniting Church. Normally what would happen is you have a minister for 10 years. We've sought an extension of another 5 years, and we're now in year 13. So that's 3 years in. So in the next 2 years, we need to, well, actually in next year, there is a discussion that needs to be had between our church and the presbytery about the future ministry of this church and what that looks like, and whether that revolves around me continuing on or not. So that's a big question. That's a really big thing. But instead of making it about, do we keep Simon, don't we keep Simon, we need to make all this happen, the question we should be asking ourselves here is, what do we need as a church to be pushing into this vision that we want to see happen? Who are the people? What is the staff requirements that we want to see happen for the church so we can see the vision happen? Because we want to see the vision happen. We want to see that happen. So over the next 6 months, the church council and the congregation is going to be working through a process to nail down what is our vision, where we are going to be heading in the future. It's going to include things such as calls and steps to step up on, whether it be staffing matters, what that may look like. Because one of the things about wanting to actually make a vision happen is we need people who are willing and able to actually do the work to get this to happen. It also talk about the areas of ministry that we are really wanting to push into and really push ahead with. We really wanted to be talking about how we are actually growing disciples and changing our culture of what we are as a church, and really making such an impact in in the lives of people around us. So I want to give you a couple little stats to help you understand the gravity and significance of the change that has happened so far in this church. If we go back a year and a half ago, and we look at the number of people in the church, it's reasonably static. It hasn't changed, the demographic hasn't changed, and we haven't had anybody reading the Bible for the first time with any new people. We haven't had any adult conversion baptisms. There hasn't been any people that said yes to Jesus Christ. We've been doing what the average Australian church has done for years. Sailed on steadily, making sure that everything that we do remains the same. We were challenged to step out of that place because churches are not about staying stable. Churches are about reaching out to new people and leading. And our mission statement is this: to lead people to become fully devoted disciples of Jesus Christ. And discipleship happens before conversion. That's actually one of the biggest changes and challenges that we've had to actually get on in our mindset, is it actually starts to happen well before somebody actually says yes to Jesus Christ as being their Lord and Saviour. And so that means we've started to change our processes, starting with the guiding group that Caleb was talking about, and then actually being replicated within the church. And we now have, I think it is about 10 people reading the Bible for the first time, if it's not more, which is fantastic. To go from 0 to 10 is brilliant for our size church. We've had people who have said yes to Jesus Christ and have been baptised in that time frame. Big faith commitments. We've had the average age of the church decrease while the numbers have increased. So that means we've had younger people coming into the church and getting involved. That's a fantastic measure. And all through this, we've also had people make faith commitments, step up into ministry roles in a time when the majority of the church have not been able to step into this building. That's an amazing thing. And I just want to actually credit all those people that have really stepped up and done amazing things during this time, because as a church, you're sitting here for those who are in the building. You're sitting here and you've got a couple of cameras in the middle. You're sitting with extra people who aren't in the building but are part of it. So every Sunday we have anywhere upwards and beyond 65 people that sit in the middle of this room with these cameras. So as we are worshipping together, and you might be going, oh, there's not that many people, and then you go, oh, hang on, there's all these people here. Easter this year was a really tough Easter. We were just getting our heads around what it means to be doing church not in the building and to be doing it online and to be working towards that. We as a church held Easter service with over 150 people. That's 3 times the numbers that we would normally have on an Easter. That is amazing because we changed our mindset and we thought differently. And we're willing to step into an area that a lot of churches are still trying to get to grips with. So as a church, I am so excited about the possibilities of the future. I'm so excited about where this may lead us and where God's going to lead us. So over the next 6 months, I said, we're going to be looking at what our vision is. It's not going to be the vision of Simon, it's going to be the vision of the church. I may have a bit of an input into this, and the church council will have an input into this. Caleb will have an input into this, and it'll be looking at where we can be in the future. Now, I get to also do the really boring part, and let me do the really boring part. I'm going to talk about money for a moment. So what I'm going to do is, Chris, can you just put up the first of the slides, it's going to be a little hard. We just quickly develop these things. But what you're looking at are the quarters. Instead of looking at weekly offering on individual basis or yearly offering, this is the quarter offering. What you will see since, and you've got 2019 down the bottom, which is green. 2018, 2019 red, and the light blue is 2020. Now, you'll see that the giving has decreased because our demographic has changed, but within this year, there has been a significant change. So we'll flip to the next slide, which just breaks it down into our weekly offerings so that we can understand what we normally give on a weekly basis. And what I want to show you is that in January and March of this year, April and June of this year, we were actually hit really hard with a decrease in offerings because of COVID-19. But even though we were hit really hard with a decrease in offerings on our weekly offering, we still didn't actually qualify for JobKeeper. Even though we were registered, we didn't qualify for JobKeeper, so we didn't get that extra payments on there. But as a church, we have managed to continue our ministry and continue to grow that ministry and continue doing the work even when our resources have been scarce. So that is a big kudos to this church and what it's been able to do. The thing I want to show you, and we'll flip to the next slide because this actually really gives us an indication of this is the percent change. You'll see that you'll see the blue lines here. This is percent change of weekly offering from the previous quarter in the year before. So it's the same time period. You'll see that in January, March, and April and June, big decrease in the blue, which is this year's amounts. But also significantly, what has happened is we've had an increase from last year in July to September and now in October to December. So we're actually giving better now. Our giving has actually increased, but we're still not at anywhere near a level to sustain further ministry, to push into the new areas where we want to be. So I'm going to invite Caleb to come back up and to kick into another area.
Well, there's a couple of things I'd like to just also reiterate, which Simon went over. Part of what he was saying about the vision there and actually part of the discipleship culture that's being created and we're looking to push into, that's been recognised by the Uniting Church of New South Wales as something that's not actually being done across the church. And across the church in Australia, if you want a bigger number, it takes an average congregation of 100 people in 3 years, is it? 1 year, sorry, in 1 year. 100 people in the congregation in 1 year to make one disciple. So when you start to consider that actually we're leading away almost even, we're pushing into this world of discipleship and going out into our community, we are actually retelling these numbers because this quarter alone, since COVID, which is doing it in restriction, we're seeing, I think there's 2 or 3 faith commitments already in a congregational size of about 50. So that is 150% on the statistic, if you do rough maths. We're seeing people on the road to those steps. And this is all things coming because we're actually not choosing to stay in the narrative that is the discipleship story that's been done by the Australian church that is happening in the Greater Uniting Church, New South Wales. And we're actually not only just looking at ourselves, we're saying we want to lead the way so we can help other churches do this too. So this is all really part of the culture that we're establishing. Something else that Simon touched on that I'd love to come back to is we're actually all the ministries that are still happening. Currently in the life of the church, you have over 3 community groups running. That's Bible studies. You currently have also the Community Cafe Council talking about the how that's going to happen. That's going to have a change. We're going to be honest, that has to have a change in how the model happens once it comes back. And that might be that it might need new young people to come in to help, or it might be that it's in different ways. That's for the church, the community cafe to actually, they're organising that. But that's something that's still being talked about. You have your Sunday services that are happening. You have the Wednesday deep dives that are happening. You have a young adults group that is happening. There's a church camp that is happening in February, I'm allowed to say. So that's very exciting because that church camp is, this one in particular, is a guiding group to see how the whole thing goes. But it's the young adults church camp. So they're going away on a retreat to deliberately go press deeper into God and formation and what that might mean. We also have just successfully done another installment of Operation Christmas Child. And this is all amongst the period of actually a pandemic. So the church is putting in some incredible work currently to make an impact. It's a fantastic story and we should celebrate. And so that's why we bring this stuff up, is because we want to come back and we remember it's not because we've done it, but because God's giving us the ability to do it. So we want to redirect all the glory back to God too. The ministries are incredible. Simon talked about 6 months. Some of you might be thinking, how did that number come up? What's this 6-month thing that you're actually talking about? And what that 6 months actually is we're actually going to put out a couple of calls tonight. And that 6 months is actually a call that we're putting out for the church to be deliberate in trying to create a healthy pattern of prayer and of solitude. We're looking for the church to take the time to stop and listen for God and to ask God what He's saying. Because as Simon said, this isn't just Simon's vision. It's not just the group that meets in a leadership meeting or a review meeting. What do we call that? It's not the Monday morning group that's just deciding this. It's not just church council that's deciding this. It's the whole church that we're looking to actually invest into this. So we're putting a call out for 6 months for the church to take time out to pray and be deliberate in their prayer about what's the church doing and to find the time to stop and listen. That's the first call. The other one that I might go to the other call that we're doing because it's related to finance. And first of all, I just love to say thank you so much to the different people that actually put towards keeping the church at the point where we don't even need the government's help to stay above. I think that is just an accolade that needs to go out to everyone, because that is generosity. And we know of stories where that's not the case. So I really want to put a praise to people for that. And the other thing is, as we're thinking future, we need to be continuous. There's this heart of generosity that we're expecting, and we feel like that there's a call that we need to put out to people too, with the vision that we're looking to put in 2 part-time 10-hour positions with a budget for a ministry that roughly comes to about $1,000. Now, I'm not wanting to put any pressure on people that are already continuous givers. That's not what I'm looking to do here, but I'm just wanting to put it out there to people that have the opportunity to give, and you're calling this place home, that actually we're asking that you invest into the church. We're asking that you give generously, and actually in your giving, find the discipline of where you're being grateful for what God's given you already too. So the point of this call is we're actually looking to employ, hopefully, this is the vision, part of the vision, is hopefully bring 2 part-time positions into the church. And look, we haven't actually established even what that might be. Let me just say, it can be pastoral, and this is part of why it's important that the congregation actually gets amongst the vision, because we want to hear what you actually have to say about what the church might need. But we're looking to put in 2 people, 10 hours, and with a budget for their ministry, and we estimate that might cost about $1,000 a week. So there are a couple of calls that we're putting out tonight. Then we just wanted to bring you into those conversations and actually try and not just make it happen from a top down, but actually from the bottom up this grows. So what I'd love to just mention quickly too is that we've deliberately left some time now for question and answers. So if you've got a question in building, I would love it if, who's got a phone that's going to answer on the comments? Was that Annette? Put up your hand, because what we're going to do is, if you're online, we'd love for you to type your comment in the box. If you're in-house, put up your hand if you have some questions about some of the things we've said tonight, because we're going to put it in the chat box so that it's not that one side gets neglected for the other, and it will form up a line of questions that we can actually address. So we're going to put that up. I wonder even if, while we maybe just give a little bit of time for people to think about what they might ask, did you want to say something more, Simon? Absolutely. Yeah, go for it.
So while we're here, Caleb will share a story, but I also want to share a story about where the church is while we're doing this. You'll have noticed that we pushed well into being a church that is able to do live streaming worship for, in the moment. So you'll see here in building, we've got the cameras in place. We've done work on our sound systems and just making it all achievable so that we can live stream worship out effectively. Now, this is actually one of these interesting things, because earlier this, a couple of months ago, the moderator rang me to ask whether I could, on behalf of New Beginnings Uniting Church, because of what we have been able to achieve, head up worship for the synod for this coming next year. And it's an online synod, so it's going to actually happen quite differently. There's a whole range of whole church events across all of New South Wales involving worship events to encourage the church to do this. And they've asked New Beginnings to lead and run this, and the expertise from our church to help run this. And we're one of the church. We've put ourselves up and said we're going to be one of the churches that will lead this whole worship across the synod. So it's the recognition of the effort and the energy that has been put into place by the Uniting Church, which is a fantastic accolade for where this church is sitting and what it's been able to do in this time frame. And that's so important for us to actually see that. And what I want to do before and a couple of you will actually see this, I'm actually going to get Lockie. Do you want to just pop up for a moment? Josh, you're going to come out from the back, and Chris is going to come out from the back. Alyssa's not with us at the moment, you often see the worship team. And Nat, you actually have to come up too. And I know you hate being up too. You often see the worship team.
They're a good-looking bunch, though, the worship team.
Exactly, because that's why they're on camera. But you often see the worship team up under here. You see the preaching team, which I need to say, we have a fantastic preaching team, and we have multiple people with the gift of being able to preach and bring the good news of Jesus Christ clearly out into the world, which is actually something that has been consciously developed within this church. But back here, we've got some of our tech team who have actually each week made sure that everything is running, and that you should actually see the legs and the brains and the fingers all spinning when there's a little issue happening, and everything has to be, reframed. So when you're going, it's not sounding right, or this is happening, these guys are working really hard to try and figure out what may be that little issue for you guys, so it works really well. But these guys have been working tirelessly week in, week out, and sometimes multiple days during the week, just to make sure that you can have worship on a Sunday. It is actually a big effort for everybody here, and we want to just congratulate you guys, and we want to acknowledge you guys for what you have done. So, okay, that's fantastic. So it's really interesting. Annette does the hosting online, so that's actually a specific ministry to actually host online. Chris is slide man extraordinary and lighting rig as well, so he makes sure that the lights actually change and do what they need to do. Lockie is one of our camera people, and Bruce is actually going to become a cameraman in training. He's just sitting up there with a camera, just seeing how things are going on, which is going to be fantastic. One of our greeters as well. And Josh actually does most of the live mixing and does a lot of the sound stuff there as well. So,
and Alyssa on the other camera.
And Alyssa's on the other camera. So each week we generally have 2 camera operators, and we also have a slides and lights person. We have a live mixing person, and we also have a sound person. So that's actually quite a good sizable team. And that's just behind the scenes. That's not actually up the front playing or doing any of the other areas. So thank you very much. So I'm going to hand over to Caleb right now.
Well, you said I had a story, but I don't know which story you actually mean, because I got that many.
Tell us about one of the life-changing stories for the people that you've been doing BDC with.
Yeah, so BDC, Building Discipling Communities. Let me tell you about, we're actually celebrating her baptism this weekend. She's in a cluster herself. So a cluster is a group of people. We actually have 3 clusters that have been replicated, 4 if you include myself and Kerry and Simon's group, and Annette and Josh. But there's the lady in that group called Morgan. Hey, Morgan, if you're on there. Oh, hey, Morgan. Yeah. She's actually been baptized. And this Sunday, she's actually going to she's summoning up all her bravery, and she's actually going to give us a little bit of her story about how she's come to encounter God. And how she's actually had a complete life change. And I don't want to give too much away, but it's an incredible story. And it's just been incredible to journey alongside. I don't know how many people get excited to be with people. I do it naturally anyway. But it's never been actually as energizing and fulfilling to have been in this sort of journey with someone. And let me just reiterate, the journey isn't actually me doing anything. It's simply facilitating the opportunity for her to do something, and that's accept Jesus in her life, which we're celebrating again on Sunday as she makes her public declaration in baptism. So that's going to be super exciting, and this is just part of what's happening in the church right now is people are making these choices. They're stepping in. They're leaning in. We're becoming more confident also with every person that we actually do this with, because it's contagious, and we get. I got an addictive personality, and I get hooked on anything. But I'm hooked right now on reading the Bible with people, and it was all from this one instance, which is just incredible.
And the other fantastic thing is Caleb has actually been asked by the organising group, so Building Discipling Culture, bdc.org. .au if you want the actual web address, to actually coach another church. So they're actually wanting people who are practitioners, who are able to do the work and replicate that. So Caleb's actually coaching Hawkesbury Valley Baptist Church.
Hawkesbury Valley Baptist Church, that's right. So the BDC program's not just for a select few churches that got in first. Their mission is to see the Australian narrative change. They want to see churches stepping into discipleship, do effective evangelism, if I use an old school term, discipleship. They want to see people start discipling before they come into faith so that they can come into faith. And so what they're doing is they're getting this inundation of churches. And you've also been put on the short list, Mr. Simon. You didn't put that in there. But they've actually asked me to oversee the guiding group for the Hawkesbury Valley Church. And so, yeah, that just entails me spending some time with them and actually helping them to understand what we've learned. And it's a really great way for us as a church to pass it forward.
So just so that everybody's aware on building a discipling culture and what we've stepped into, it's a 2-year process for our church, and we are almost, actually, we're 1 year,
Half.
we're over half, we're a year through the process, but we're part of the first wave of churches that this has been rolled out to. So we're part of, and goes across all Australia and also New Zealand. But just as of last week, when we were in our last intensive, they were just saying that they've just brought on 88 new churches across 10 denominations. So it's not about one denomination, it's about a movement across all of Australia. So this is really exciting because churches are really stepping up and making a difference within the world around us and doing a great work about it. So let's just jump in. Are there any questions? Have we got any questions up online and any questions in the building?
If it was in-house, pop up your hand so we can chuck them in the chat. So
Miller's got a question. So Miller,
are you able to come down and take them, Josh? Or...
Josh will whack it in the chat as Miller asks. So.
Oh, okay.
Explain a little bit more fully to the people here as to what's happening with our own BDC groups. I don't think you've told them how many or how many people are involved, and I think that's an important point.
Okay, so
absolutely.
So what's happening with our BDC groups? So we have the guiding group and then 3 new groups under that, and each group is roughly about 5 people in the group, plus the person who's leading that. So we have currently 4 groups that are running. So that's 4 groups with 6 people in each of those groups. So that's 5 people plus the leader. But if we actually do the maths, that's 20 people in our church who are in building a discipling culture cluster group. So that's actually the training group. And that's looking that there's another group that will come on shortly. So there's more people who are leaning into the process. So if you're interested in any of these and wanting to understand what it means to actually lead somebody actually into discipleship and learning how to, as they say, cross the chicken line and actually ask somebody, do you want to read the Bible with me? Which is actually one of the key phrases in that. And actually learn how to read the Bible effectively and easily with somebody that's not about your own super profound knowledge, but about what God is speaking into the passage right there. So there's a process called Discovery Bible Method, which is a really great way of reading the Bible. And I just want to encourage you, if you are willing and thinking that you would like to learn more on what it means to lead somebody to Jesus Christ, to speak to Caleb, myself, Kerry, Josh, or Annette, and we will endeavour to place you with one of the within a new group that is working there.
This isn't an exclusive process either. Let me just say, this is for everyone. We don't want this to just be a few people doing it. We're not into creating superstar Christians, as they'd say. This is about empowering everyone and training everyone to get to the point where you're comfortable to ask that question, would you read the Bible with me? I'm looking for someone to read it with. And so it's not actually about here's a select few that's going to lead the way for the next stage of the church. It's actually we want to see everyone being able to engage with it in the same way that everyone is. And so if you are interested, let me reiterate, please do mention, because there are groups being formed all the time and there are people we're training to be able to coach the groups too. So you're in good hands.
And just to kind of round out Merla's question, to actually give you a bit of history so that you actually understand why we are doing it, building discipling culture, is that one of the areas that we as a church have been struggling with for a very long time is actually this whole question about discipleship. We've run programs, we've done some outreach events, we've done things, and they've worked a little bit, but they haven't been effective. We've tried to run programs, but and when we heard about building a discipling culture, it was one of those God moments. Just said we actually need to get involved in this. And so what we wanted to do is it's actually not about running a program. It's actually about changing the culture of our church, and it's actually changing the patterns of behaviour that we undergo regularly as an organisation such as the church and as individuals within the church as well. So it actually changes who we are, and you can see these changes within even just how we worship, how we present material, what we're thinking about, what's the important processes. So Caleb talked previously about godly desired outcomes. And that's actually about a process change for our church. It's not about thinking about how many people are sitting in worship each week, how much money is in the offering plate, how much money have we spent on this. It's actually going, what is the impact? It's a measurement of impact of God working through our church and measuring the impact of whether what we have been doing has actually been getting success, where it's the number of people reading the Bible, it's the number of people first-time commitments, their godly desired outcomes. So it's actually changing the notion of what we measure and how we think. And it's changing our culture.
It really is. Great question. Thanks, Merla. Was there anything else that you'd like to add to that question? Lovely. Was there any other questions? Did we have any from online? No, none online. It's an easy crowd to please. Okay. This microphone's set to my voice, and I have a lot of projections.
I think what has been said tonight is great, but I think we've also got to make the point with people, but it's not all about a heavy task that we have to do. We do need to maintain the relationship groups that we have within a church that link with the community or that we are participating in that are community groups. I just don't want people to think it's all so heavy, it's too much for me. There's a lot of fun and excitement in it as well, in the way in which we can go about it.
And it absolutely is. And, if you think about the image that's given, the yoke actually isn't on us when we step into the path that Jesus we yoke with. And when we yoke with Jesus, and those that don't know what yoking is, when a field was plowed back in the day, there would be two bulls and they'd be put next to each other, a bull and a younger one, or there was two cows or something that were put together with each other, and it would pull the plow behind. Yes, words. And so what would happen is it would learn from the cow. When Jesus says, my yoke is light, it's because he's the one that's teaching us. And when we yoke with him, we actually learn, and you get that fun that you're saying, Merla, and it's not actually a heavy burden. It's actually a delight to step into, and it's actually something that is relational. It's not by yourself. It's actually something that is, like you're saying, all of those things. So that's a great point.
And thanks, Farmer Caleb. It's actually really important, that point that you raised, because it's not about creating heavy work for us. It's actually about the change of our attitude. And we've got a question up there from Joanne, and we'll just get into that in just a second. And so I just actually want to reiterate something that was actually highlighted to us last week and is going to be brought into some of our thinking as well, is about missional communities. And things like cafes, the Cronulla Community Cafe is a missional community. It's where we're actually gathering together to do work together in a particular area that supports those in need. And that, it could be English as a second language. It could be feeding the hungry. So it's not necessarily any one particular thing, but it's not a church in itself, but it's actually a missional community working together. And that's actually a part of who we are. And it's a part of where we need to be stepping into, and it's a part of what we need to be looking at into the future. And
that's absolutely the point, is it's a part of the church. It's not removing yourself from the church to do that, but actually it comes hand in hand with the gospel's going out with this community. It's not that it needs to be something that's removed.
And things like ladies' fellowship on Friday, or then things, and those kind of things. They're all also missional communities, because they have a particular mindset about what they need to do, and it can be about fun, and it can be about learning, it can be about community together. Now, Joanne's asked a question online. Could you please give more information about the new ministry jobs and raising money?
Good question. Hey, so. The main point of actually bringing up the money aspect is there's people that do give consistently, but we also recognise maybe some people can reevaluate their position. And also there's new people stepping in, and we don't actually give a tithe talk on a Sunday because we don't want to necessarily make it the focus about it. It's not that we don't offer opportunity to tithe, but it's just we don't make a big deal about it like some places do to be the focus of the service. But what we wanted to use in this moment was to actually start that conversation about, well, if we want new ministry to happen, and we do have ministries growing, like the young adults, and if you want someone to specifically look into that, or if you want to look at something like a pastoral care role or any different sort of role, it requires funding. So we've got to talk about it somewhere. So this is where we thought this might be a good space to actually do some vision casting for it, some opportunity for fundraising. And really, if I may put a personal thought in, is that sometimes feel like the church, at least from my generational perspective, has forgotten how to do fundraising. I remember a time, well, I've been told of a time, it was before my time, when the church did fundraising well. They learned how to talk about the church well. They learn how to talk about money well and to bring funds in to do new ministry stuff. But this is what we're trying to restart. So maybe if you want to go on from there, Simon.
Okay, fantastic. So one of the things that is actually really key about church and change is that it actually requires time and energy and effort from people that you can put aside to actually do a task. This is not to take away being a volunteer and being involved, but it's actually to say we want to set aside some people, we want to pay them some money to do specific tasks within the church to help us grow to the next point. As a church, we have actually grown in size over the last 12 months, so that's fantastic. We actually need to acknowledge that. We've grown in size. We haven't necessarily in the same way grown in income as well. So that's actually something that we've looked at and said, actually, we need to address that. We need to talk about that and be open and honest. If we want to push into new areas of ministry, if we want to actually not just maintain, we need to think about who we're going to put on next and who can we invest in order for the future of the church to continue to grow and continue to thrive and continue to have a call out into the world around us. And continue reaching new people. So that's why we are looking at new ministry jobs. It won't be a quick process. As much as we'd love it to be really quick, it won't be a quick process. It'll actually be a process that is tied with the vision that we are looking at. So it's going to be a 6 months process before we actually are able to go, this is the jobs that we actually want to have. But we want to do in this process of doing 6 months, we actually want to start raising that funds in that time with the expectation of this is what we're going to be doing, because we actually want to be able to pay the labourers for the work that they do.
Yeah, and it's for that reason we can't actually say right now what the roles will be. And again, because we want congregational investment for that, and we need to actually see that it's something that the church wants. And that will be reflective in whether or not there's money for it, really. And that's part of ownership too. And so that's why we partly put up the call now, is so that when it comes to that point of time, it's so that many people can actually come into it.
As a church, we've been very blessed with our financial resources through the property resources that we've had and the financial reserves that we've been able to do ministry with. This is we're at our limit of what we can do in order for ministry staff. So we're asking to step up and make the next stage happen for the church.
And the last thing we want to do is make it that people that do give feel like their contribution isn't recognized. We do appreciate and value that very much. And we want to thank you all very much for that. But this is in preparation and planning for an expected growth within the church too.
Do we have any more questions?
Bruce? When does church start? Well, that actually comes into what are some of the next things that we're doing in the church. So let me tell you about the Christmas series that we're doing. We're looking at peace, aren't we? So the next series in the Christmas one that we've done, every year, if you remember, we've done a different word of Christmas, and that actually is peace. So we are encouraging people, the doors will be open, and we can actually have coffee afterwards. Still right? He's nodding. That's good.
In December.
So we actually want to have time with each other after the service. It's not just like it currently is where we come in. If you come in and want to be a part of it, you just sit and listen and then we have to go. But this is actually, we can have community together again. So that's something we desire to do. That starts on the 6th of December. I know that because I'm preaching that first one, so that's good. But so that's the 6th of December. What's happening after that is all those people that got up on the stage, the people that are doing the worship leading and stuff, they haven't had a break yet this year. So while a lot of people have been able to break because they were forced to, which isn't good, but we haven't had a break. So generally the church goes a little bit slower over that time. Might be a fair way of describing it.
Yep.
But what we're doing this year is we're actually going to stop and we're saying to those people that come in, week out and haven't had a break and have been putting in extra work for the church, have a break. We want to respect them and give them a chance to recover. That's going to happen on the 27th is the first Sunday where we're going purely online that week.
Yep.
And so that will happen through January. And then we're going to come fully back first week of February.
Yep, I think that's what we're planning. Kerry and I will be working on something on that. Yep, fantastic. While the young adults are away,
we go to the
Kerry and I will be leading worship and running something in here, so that'll be fantastic. And it's really interesting, like just today, because of the way we're going to actually be doing it, we're doing some pre-recording for this. We were actually just doing a recording with the Reverend Dr. Matangi Jessup Phillip. Oh, I've just forgotten his last name. Philemani, I think. But Matangi, who is the new Presbytery Ministry, Mission and Leadership Minister. which is one of the new positions that have been put into the presbytery. A great conversation around Christmas, around different cultural understandings of Christmas. So I really want to encourage you to come and join in on that worship on the 27th of December, because that is when we are kicking off our summer series. And that will actually be about how faith is interacting with us as individuals. So there'll be a lot of conversation that happens in that time between the interviewer, which will be one of us, and some other people that you may not have met before or heard about before. So we're bringing a few people in to bring some messages to us at that time, which will be, I'm actually really looking forward to it. Really enjoyed today's conversation. And really looking forward to hearing it again in end of December, but through January as well. So
That's great. Well, we have reached, one more. We did start a little late, so we'll take it.
Yep, we're not looking. None of this process is about thinking about closing down groups.
That's right.
So we're not looking about closing down groups. I actually want to give a shout out to Nick, actually, while here, because talking about reading the Bible with people, Nick actually he hosts Bible reading online through the Bible app, and he has 20 people reading the Bible with him, and I think that's fantastic, don't you?
It's awesome.
And they're actually people locally, but actually internationally as well. So it's, the reach that we can have is actually amazing, and it reaches across. So Carmen does a few things around in Italy as well. So yes, to answer that question succinctly, the group should be continuing on.
And maybe just talk to your leader about what they do over the period. Whoever it is that organises or makes that group happen, just have a chat to them. So, great. Well, we haven't got any notices on our alert board, so we're going to invite Mr. Eric back up to come close in prayer for us, if you wouldn't mind.
Lord, we thank you for what you are doing here at Cronulla and through the tech team all around the world. We pray that we will always be open to your leading, that we will stop and listen and see over this next 6 months what you have to say to us about how we can be more effective in making disciples so that others may come to know and love you better. Amen.